I'm fascinated with the fact that if something is naturally occurring, it cannot be patented. And if
Yeah.
it's patented, they've made it synthetic, which is why in the Bible they talk about pharmakia equals sorcery. He said something horrific, like 6 out of 10 young adults cannot pass the physical fitness test required to serve in the military if you wanted to do that. That's horrific. In many ways, I feel that I'm getting better and better and better while this old structure, the matrix, as it were, crumbles. And the medical system is the key thing in my world that needs to crumble and is crumbling because it's all based on disease screening. What are sex steroids made out of? Cholesterol.
Cholesterol. Yeah.
So they've got everybody thinking you need to get your cholesterol under 200. That is absolutely wrong.
Terrible.
Why? The bone in their mandible, in their jaw, gets so dense, it cuts off the blood supply to the tooth.
Wow.
So more people are needing root canals. And then there are these fractures, atypical fractures of the femur, where the femur breaks in the middle between the knee and the hip, and they don't, and they're non-union.
Right. I am absolutely delighted to have a return guest today. I think most of my audience know the amazing Dr. Christiane Northrup, who is a board certified OBGYN and a New York Times best-selling author whose work has literally helped millions of women reclaim their hormonal health at every stage of your life. Now, many of you have got one of her books, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, The Wisdom of the Menopause, Goddesses Never Age, Dodging Energy Vampires. But today we are diving into something that affects every single one of us that's watching this, particularly us women, but men, you have hormones too, our hormones. And in a time when there is so much pushing our hormones off balance, Dr. Christiane has kindly agreed to come on today to tell us about a fantastic new program she's running where we can all reset our hormones in 4 weeks. So thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Christiane. How are you?
Thank you. What a pleasure. No, I'm good. There's so much going on, as you said, Catherine. We have, the UN thing and Charlie Kirk. It's so interesting to me. Charlie Kirk was here in Maine, and I got to see him in the end of August. And then Chris Tomlin, one of the musicians who played at his memorial, was also here in Maine, literally on the Thursday night before
Wow.
that memorial on Sunday. So I always pay attention to those things, like what is in my immediate environment. We know in herbalism, they tell you that the herbs growing in your backyard
Mm,
are often the things that you need the most because we are part of nature
yeah,
and we are part of, and we are designed so that the mind of God and our minds interact. We're made in the image of God, and we've been talked out of it. So, for instance, I was talking last night with a bunch of people who worked in pharmacy for years, creating drugs. What they said was all these pharmacies have catalogs of thousands of natural substances, plants and mushrooms, and so thousands. And they take the natural substances and then make them different so that they can patent them. But that's not how God designed it. So I'm fascinated with the fact that if something is naturally occurring, it cannot be patented. And if
yeah.
it's patented, they've made it synthetic, which is why in the Bible they talk about pharmakia equals sorcery. So here we are at this turning point where we're understanding about regenerative farming, we're understanding about chronic disease and At this point, I just listened to RFK Jr. give his talk at the UN, and he said something horrific, like 6 out of 10 young adults cannot pass the physical fitness test required to serve in the military if you wanted to do that. That's horrific. I
Yeah.
mean, that is, you and I were, keeping our muscle mass up and our body fat down and, doing all the things to truly thrive. And so the big lie about perimenopause and menopause is that it's the beginning of the end. And it's the beginning of where the culture and mainstream media begins to infiltrate your mind with, oh, this is the time when you start to decline.
Yeah.
This is the time that if you're not married, you'll never meet a man because they all want someone who's 20 years younger. And all of those messages go in, okay, it's time now. You need your mammograms and you need your colonoscopies and you need your blood work and you need, literally you turn 50 and suddenly, I remember this. My mother told me about this. She said, my goodness, I turned 50 and suddenly in my mailbox are all of these ads for hearing aids and glasses and assistance devices and, canes and wheelchairs. And it's like, what?
It's hysterical. I mean, to me, 50 is so young. I'm 57, nearly 58, and
Yeah, yeah.
I feel, well, luckily mentally I'm regressing and getting more childish as each year goes by.
Well,
But
that's
it's
good.
such a story that we're told, isn't it? It really is.
Yes.
Also, most of us, Dr. Christiane, we're not told to understand our natural cycles, even our menstrual cycle through from
No.
start through to finish, or how to support our bodies and our minds through these different stages. And also we've got so many toxins in our environment, not just the physical toxins from the air, water, food, the EMFs, the toxins that we're fed emotionally through social media. It's never ending.
Well, that's exactly right. Now, so here's the cool part. Around our bodies is what's called a biofield. And this has been very, very well studied, but not well known. But it's a torus field, so it looks sort of like a donut. So, you could see it like this, and it extends at about 6 feet. Although our thoughts are so potent that you can feel a person's energy if they're very positive, you can measure their energy field a long way away. And if they're very negative, the energy field contracts. So a positive person, and I'm not talking about a purple washing, we
Yeah,
call it, where I'm fine, everything's good. No, no. There's something you and I specialize in, which is staying upbeat and healthy despite all the evidence to the contrary, despite the fact that everyone tells us we should be horrified, the world is coming to an end. It's the apocalypse, which just means to remove the veil, by the way. That's all
yeah,
that word means. And so we're getting, I mean, in many ways, I feel that I'm getting better and better and better while this old structure, the matrix, as it were, crumbles. And the medical system is the key thing in my world that needs to crumble and is crumbling because it's all based on disease screening. Okay, so it's time for your fill in the blank. It's time for your whatever. And then when we find a little something, then there's sort of overkill. So for instance, in the newer high resolution mammograms, they find more and more what's called ductal carcinoma in situ. It's not cancer, but they call it ductal carcinoma in situ. Scares everyone to death. And when you're scared, what happens? Your intuition goes away. You
absolutely.
can't hear your inner voice. You can't hear the divine messages that our DNA is a satellite. It's an antenna to God. And but we've been told, and just look at, I mean, there's medicine, but there's also religion. What does that do? Oh,
Mm.
that teaches you to fight with each other. oh, well, you're made in the image of God, but this is how you need to think about it, and this is how you need to think about it. I mean, when you think about the horrific carnage that has come from religion, whoa, whoa.
Absolutely.
But frankly, medicine has been the big religion, and Aaron Siri just wrote a book that was kind of like, and he's got religious symbology with vaccines, that's really the religion. And you could see that during the COVID era, which is, the religion of we need to get this. I'm getting this to protect you, this kind of madness. So here we are with all these women now. I'm, talking to women in their 40s, and they tell me, I'm so terrified. I'm getting hot flashes. My periods are irregular. I don't know how to think about this. And when in fact, it's just a reset. It's a spiritual growth phase. It's a rebirth of the soul. You go back to what you were in adolescence, and we all have unfinished business from
Mm.
adolescence. And so I call it, you're at a crossroads, grow or die. So you see women, I mean, I know you have many friends who are much younger than you,
Yeah.
who look much older.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
act a lot older as well, physically less able. And because it's a mindset. I mean, I had one of the ladies say to me the other day, oh, we're too old to wear jeans now at our age, Catherine. And I was like, bugger off, speak
What?
for yourself,
What?
you know.
What?
But this is the mindset that people are fed into, that at this age you behave and you do and you
Yeah,
have this. And
yeah.
I don't feed into that at all.
No, no, but those are what are called cultural portals, and
Mm,
they're much more powerful than your biology. So the first thing we're going to teach in this 4 weeks to reset your hormones is every thought you think and every emotion you have has a cascading metabolic effect on your physical cells. So if you're thinking, oh, it's too late for me, or I can no longer wear jeans, or, here's the other one that a friend of mine gets from her father all the time. Um, you're over 50. You should cut your hair.
yes.
You should not have long hair. That's another one. We should all turn into gray-haired, short haircut people who are angry all the time. There's a lot of them around, but
They're so
they're
young, yeah.
so, I would just consider them a warning.
Mm,
Don't do this. Don't do this. And so, one of the things that women are always asking, do I need to take hormone replacement? Now, I don't
yeah.
know, in England, is it easy to get bioidentical hormones, what they call bioidentical, which means exactly how your body made them?
It's interesting to know because I mean, this is an example of how ignorant lots of people are at menopause. I had the attitude, Dr. Christiane, that, you know, I wasn't even going to consider the menopause. So I'm nearly through the menopause, a lot later than my twin sister, interestingly. Haven't had any symptoms that I know about. So I don't know. I think it is pretty accessible to people, but I've never needed to look into it. Touch wood. Yeah.
Right, because, okay, so this is important.
Mm.
You have healthy adrenals,
Mm-hmm.
and you're nourishing yourself well, and you're doing the work. Okay, there's something else that I, think everyone needs to know, which is we have a certain identity
Yeah.
when we're born, an identity of, when you were knit together in your mother's womb. And if your vocation serves your identity, you're good.
Mm.
But if it doesn't, like if you're hating your job, or you're any of those things, or you're just doing these things to get by, but it's not lined up with your identity. So my identity, for instance, is a midwife for the embodied soul of humanity. That's the identity. The vocation of an OBGYN fit in really well, but there's a million other ways to do it. And
Yeah.
I would imagine your identity is definitely healer.
Yeah.
And, and also, like one of my friends is a goat farmer, but also a pastor. So I was asking him
Oh.
what's his identity? And he instantly said, shepherd,
That's
shepherd.
amazing, absolutely amazing. And mine definitely, I would resonate with that because mine's all to do with animals and nature. So, and luckily, as you've seen behind, I'm surrounded with them. But you've hit on so many important things there, and this is why I think your 4 week course. I mean, it's so appealing because 4 weeks is so achievable for people, Dr.
Yes.
Christiane, and you cover so much more in this than anyone could ever get with the internet searches, which are going to lead them down blind alleys. So
Yeah.
what can they expect from these 4 weeks on their journey with you?
Well, they're going to expect to understand the interaction, the dance of their hormones, particularly cortisol, epinephrine, insulin, because all of the hormone hell
Mm,
results from too many stress hormones and leading you down the path of more stress hormones. Because
yeah,
with too much cortisol and epinephrine, if you are skipping ovulations, you're going to have a lot of estrogen, not enough progesterone. And then in the face of the stress hormones, your estrogen becomes another stress hormone. It becomes a catechol estrogen. It's fascinating.
brilliant.
And so I want people to know this is what it is because people always, should I get my hormones tested? And I frankly, I used to do it. I don't do it anymore
Yeah,
because hormones change moment to moment. And what we're going for here is I want you to know how to create adrenal health. Your adrenals and your ovaries are just tremendously connected. And if you approach midlife in a burnout situation, which many women do, then you don't have the building blocks to create the steroid hormones, the sex steroids that you need. We're going to talk about cholesterol.
yeah,
The statin drugs have been a disaster for many women. What are sex steroids made out of? Cholesterol.
cholesterol. Yeah,
So they've got everybody thinking you need to get your cholesterol under 200. That is absolutely wrong.
terrible.
So we're going to just do a teaching on what are hormones and then what do you need to supplement? Like how should you choose whether to do bioidentical hormones, which many women swear by, and I was a
Yeah,
pioneer in those in the 90s. Um, and it was on Oprah in 2001 with the bioidentical hormones. And at the time, it was very hard to get them. Now I want people to know what is a bioidentical hormone from
mm,
a regular pharmacy,
yeah,
because you don't need to do just the formulary pharmacies. And then I want them to know what needs to happen with their fascia, with their muscles, with their bones. Do we suddenly start to dissolve our bones, and go for osteoporosis? No,
mm,
no, because it's bone quality that's important, not bone density. So we have all these Fosamax and bone building drugs that create dense bones, but they're brittle.
yes,
So we're seeing all of this weird stuff like dentists, endodontists will say to their patients, did you get on one of those alendronate drugs? Because suddenly they need a root canal. Why? The bone in their mandible, in their jaw, gets so dense, it cuts off the blood supply to the tooth.
wow,
So more people are needing root canals. And then there are these fractures, atypical fractures of the femur, where the femur breaks in the middle between the knee and the hip. And they don't, and they're non-union. It's very hard to get them to knit because the bone quality is is off. Bone is living tissue
yes,
constantly remodeling. So, let me give you an example from my own life. So I'm reading about that we should all do squats and hangs, like we should hang, from a bar, maybe 10 minutes a day, and we should squat 30 minutes a day. Let me tell you, my knees were not having it. But instead of the message that most of us give ourselves, Oh God, my knees are shot, right? I hear that crepitus thing when I get up from a squat. No, what you know is this is the body is living tissue
Hmm.
and it will create pathways along use. So the more you use them in a certain way, eventually it's kind of like taming a wild horse. I was watching Heartland last night, one of my favorite shows, and so the father's out there taming this wild horse. It's the same with your knees. Of course they don't want to do it. Of course, and hanging was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm a leg dominant person.
Yeah,
Okay. So, but now, I can do it and it's sort of smoothed out the trapezius. It's creating stability in the shoulders, all of that sort of thing. And shoulder that I've had for a while, it's going away. But if I were to stop at the beginning, like, oh, this hurts, I'm never doing this again. Actually, that's what your body does at perimenopause. It's like, I'm happy in the old thing, but the problem is the old thing isn't working anymore. And that also refers to relationships. So I personally had a fibroid that was this big during perimenopause. And I once got on stage in New York City and I said, I have a fibroid as big as my husband's head. And I mean, it was kind of funny, but then I realized it was from creative energy being funneled into a dead end
yeah,
job or relationship. That's why 40% of women have fibroids. And there's, of course, there's nutritional stuff and all that, but at the end of the day, it is our emotions, and they have to move. And you need to change the way you think at perimenopause. So you have to become discerning about what you listen to. Because if you're around a whole bunch of, well, this is the end, and oh my God, this is dry, I never want to have sex again in my life, and, the negative stuff. And by the way, there are all these cartoons about menopausal women.
exactly.
No, I hate those. I hate anything that puts us in these pigeonholes. Just can't.
Completely, because it's just the brainwashing that so many people think that they can see through, particularly our audiences with world events, and
Yeah.
they don't see that they're being completely manipulated and brainwashed into this medical control system and feeling of inadequacy and
The
usefulness.
medical control system, I think, is the control grid. When I
Absolutely.
when I look at everything we have in our audiences, right? We have all the people who are, understand about the matrix and they understand about the deep state and all of the rest of it. But the minute they get an ache or pain, they're running to the doctor.
Yep.
And I've been shocked by that my entire career. I mean, for 40 years, I've been shocked by that. It's like this incredible fear of this physical body and the processes of the physical body. And in my practice for years, I would hear women say to me that their mothers, when they got pregnant, and the mothers would say to them, "Now you'll see how I suffered with you." I
Yes.
mean, this sort of chain of
Yeah.
pain that women, men tell war stories. Women tell birth stories like they're war stories. It's
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, it's like there's so much brainwashing, and I think this is why your course is so important because it's giving people so many different angles and tools to understand themselves better. And once we start understanding ourselves, all the answers start to fall into place.
That's right. Now, also, just let me be clear. Hormone replacement is not the answer
Yeah.
for a whole lot of women. You didn't need anything.
Mm.
And then there's, I have an herbal supplement, Pararia mirifica from Thailand, that works beautifully for many women. And so the main thing is to know that you have choices. What medicine does, and I happen to be the first edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom came out in 1994.
Wow.
And I said in there, and then the Women's Health Initiative had just launched, and the plan was put everyone on Premarin, pregnant mare's urine, and Provera, a synthetic progestin, because the plan was if hormone replacement raised your HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, then that was going to prevent heart attack in women. Now, it was, correlation, not causation, but, they made a good case for it. And so this massive women's health initiative was launched with all these women getting on Premarin and Provera. And in the book, I said this in 94, they're using the wrong hormone at the wrong dose, and they're using the same dose for everyone, and they are never going to find out what they're interested in finding out. Sure enough, so that's 94. 2002, I'm on a whale watch in Cape Cod Bay, and I get a call from the Wall Street Journal. They have just stopped the Women's Health Initiative because of all these women getting cancer, getting all of this stuff. And so, as you might imagine, they're like scrambling. But they did another thing that I want everyone to notice. Why is it always some giant fear tactic? Like all of a sudden, it's dangerous to take hormones. Like many women were doing fine on them, by
Yeah.
the way. It's not what my choice would be, but if it worked for them, why not? Right?
Mm.
So anyway, let me shut this phone off. If it worked for them, good. Well, suddenly, all these women are going cold turkey. They're having hot flashes. Everyone
Yeah.
is in a panic and hysterical. Okay. And so they call me and I said, look, it needs to be an individualized dose. It needs to match what the woman's body has made. And what I had to laugh because there was a guy who's probably long gone named Wolf Udian, who was president of the North American Menopause Society. And he was, women were being kicked out of their doctor's offices back then if they didn't want to take hormone replacement. Well,
Wow.
then we can't see you. That's how paternalistic it
Mm.
is. I just talked with a young father who took his daughter into her pediatrician age 11 and they wanted to give her Gardasil. And he said, no. And the doctor said, well, if you're not going to do this, you're no longer welcome at this practice. What kind of medicine is that where you feel as though you need to do what the doctor says because he or she knows your body better than you do? But it's no different from fetal monitoring. When monitoring came in, I happened to be a resident, and suddenly overnight the C-section rate soared to
Yeah.
25% overnight. And now you go into any labor and delivery suite in a hospital and you ask the woman, how are you doing? And she and her husband look at the monitor. They
Mm.
don't know how she's doing. They have to look at the television. And they do it even if the monitor is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so we have made the self, we've taken the self from the self and made it an object to be observed instead of what's happening with your life. And perimenopause and menopause are the mother of all wake-up calls. So if there's something that needs to be adjusted in your life, your diet, your exercise, your relationships, where you're living, if it needs to be adjusted, your body is a barometer and it's going to tell you. And you are not going to want to listen because what I always
Yeah.
say is if it had to get to the body for you to listen, you didn't want to hear it. And in my case, it was my marriage. I mean, it's like, oh, please, God, please let it be anything but that. That's a major disruption in
Massive.
your life with all kinds of fallout. But here's what I knew because of all my years in women's health. I knew that if I stayed married in that situation, which was not an equal partnership in any way,
Mm.
I knew that I would get inflammatory breast cancer,
Yeah.
bilateral, and I'd be dead in a year. I knew it because I had watched it for years in my practice, women who were not on the right track and their body was screaming. Let's say 7 yeast infections in a year.
Yeah.
That's not a monostat deficiency. So I knew that I had to pay attention. And of course it was a massive turning point. And it is for many women. And here's the other thing though. If you can get ahead of it, see, the universe will always take care of you and put you on the right path. But if you can do it in partnership with God, with the universe, instead of kicking and screaming, it'll be a lot easier. So perimenopause is a time when you say to God, what do you want me to think about this? What do you want me to know about this? And it's not, okay, let me tell you the thing that will mess up your hormones more than anything. Here it is. Dear God, why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? Okay, Jamie Winship's work, he said, look, God is your commanding officer. And if you're a soldier, you don't ask your commanding officer, why do you want me to do that? No. You ask, how do you want me to think about it? What do you want me to do about it? That's where you are. But if you get stuck in this victim position, and women are trained to do this, by the way. I'm a victim of my hormones.
Yeah.
The menstrual cycle has been called the curse. All of the rest of it, like childbirth, the
So
worst
true.
pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always the physical, you know, a man works from sun to sun, but women's work is never done. And, all of these things about like just dragging your ass around, forget it. It doesn't need to be that way. And that's what I want to teach women.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, how will your course run? So, when does it start? There's
It
going to be
starts
a link
on
below.
October
So,
7th.
October
October,
7th. And if
yep, and
people can't watch the live ones, can they have access to the replays?
absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And then I will also on the lives be answering questions live, but those will also be in the replay. Because what you find is this, we all kind of have the same questions, right?
Yes.
And so someone will always answer the question that you had. But I'm going to cover hormones, hormone replacement, supplements, herbs, meditation, the things that you really, really need, the nutrients that everyone needs. Like basically, you're replenishing the soil of your body. You're building a new foundation so that the years ahead are the best years of your life. When the culture tells you that's the end. No, no, it's the beginning.
Absolutely fantastic. So, run through just finally for anyone watching this, Dr. Christiane, who
Mhm.
is this for? What sort of, are there particular age groups you're hitting, particular people going through different phases? Because obviously this hits different people at different times.
Right. This would be best for any woman in her late 30s, all through the 40s, up to it. Now, there are women still having their period at 55, 56.
Yeah, I was.
So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, which is of course one of the wonderful reasons why, because you've had your own hormones like in all of
yeah,
that time. The average age of menopause in the West is 52,
yeah,
but it depends on when your mother went through and all of that. But it would be anyone late 30s up until, let's say, early 60s,
yeah,
and anyone who's worried about it, anyone who's seen their mother go through
yeah.
hell, and they don't want that to be their story. So it's kind of a pre-paving. And what's interesting is because of the medical stuff we've been doing to people, we have women in their early 30s in premature menopause now. And so,
Completely. I know people who've been going through that. Yeah.
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
Dr. Christiane, this would also be really useful for anyone who's a mother at any age, because the more us as mothers understand this ourselves, the more we can change the story for our daughters.
Yes, that's really true. Yeah, that's really true. It's interesting. So I was um, talking to some of my colleagues, and Dr. Larry Palevsky, pediatrician, just put out a wonderful session on how to care for things like a childhood fever, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking with this other group of homeschoolers, and these young women did not have a mother and a grandmother who taught them how to take care of babies
Yeah.
and a fever. So when their baby has a fever, they're running to the doctor,
Mm.
and then they're getting something that's not so good. So my daughter, I called her and I said, well, Larry's coming out with this, and I mentioned fever. She goes, well, that's the whole cure for whatever it is the fever. Right, right. Now, not up to 105, 106, but still, that's the body's mechanism. And we did a thing with Dr. Lee Merritt last night, the 5 docs, and she talked about the people who got really, really sick in the great flu epidemic of 1918, which was another psyop, by the way.
Mm.
That was not what we think. But the people who got really sick were the ones who were given the equivalent of acetaminophen. And I think acetaminophen was out by that time. And there's all kinds of things they're doing. I have to say, for pain relief, everybody, you want the narcotics. For acute pain, if you've got a fractured bone, the bone it's got all these nerves. It's very painful. You need a good pain relief, and it should be codeine or morphine for a short period of time. I just learned that a friend of mine who broke a lot of bones was given IV Tylenol. Yikes, which eats up the glutathione in the
Yeah.
liver. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
my goodness.
anyhow, but we're going to teach what is the miracle of your body, what's happening when your reproductive years switch into your generative years. You got way more life ahead, but they'll make you think you don't. So we're going to dispel the myths and create a new story.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic you're doing this, and it's incredibly reasonably priced. So everyone who's watching this, please share to all the women in your life. This is so, so important. I mean, I've seen a bit of what's in it and it's absolutely fantastic. And please, please do take this opportunity, because we can all start to re-educate ourselves and pass this information around to others and really make such a huge difference to people's lives. And all the men will thank us for learning about this as well, I'm sure.
That's right.
Oh,
Great.
thank you so much, Dr. Christiane. And I can't wait to hear everyone's feedback of how it's going. Let us know, people.
All right.
Thank you so much for
Thanks so
taking the
much.
time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.